Floyd. Well, that's a band that needs little to no introduction. They're a household name in this day and age. Albums like Dark Side of the Moon, Animals, Wish You Were Here, and The Wall. All classics. Pink Floyd started in the late 60s and progressed onward until the mid-90s. Each album offered something new. No two albums were ever the same. In 1973, they broke through, broke records, and shared people's expectations when they made the landmark album, Dark Side of the Moon. Now, unfortunately, that's the only thing that a lot of people seem to know them for, just Dark Side of the Moon. But Pink Floyd has had a long and varied career. Few people know about the original founding member, Syd Barrett, and the original album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, one of the best psychedelic albums of all time. Even fewer still know the fact that the reason that David Gilmour, the guitar genius of Pink Floyd, is even in the band to begin with is due to Syd's inability to cope with his hallucinogenic drug addiction and eventual fallout with the band. That's ultimately why David Gilmour joined, and that's why we're here today. Gilmour gave Floyd their key sound, their signature guitar wonderfulness. Pink Floyd became known for their amazing guitar solos and wonderful trippy conceptness. David Gilmour was an influential member of the band, but in this case, all members were influential. Roger Waters was the creative genius. David Gilmour brought these creative ideas to life with his wonderful and talented guitar playing. Nick Mason on drums, adding much character and feel to the album. And the late Richard Wright on keyboards. This album is a tribute to Richard Wright. This album, released now in 2014, The Endless River. Pink Floyd wouldn't nearly be half as interesting if it wasn't for the fantastic keyboard work on display. Oftentimes it's taken for granted. A song like Welcome to the Machine or Shine On You Crazy Diamond would not have been the same had it not been for Richard Wright's talents. Now, Roger Waters, well, he was the creative man of the band, the guy who brought these ideas to the table. Well, he was just a bassist. You know, the bass really didn't add much. He was heavy on vocals and ideas. Richard Wright didn't really do much in the way of singing. He was always behind the pianos, the synths. And he sort of goes underappreciated as a result. But his work on Pink Floyd's discography, his mark that he's left, is undeniable. Try imagining listening to any of your favorite Floyd songs, especially some of the old ones, like Adam Heart Mother. And you'll find that the band would not be the same without Richard Wright. It wouldn't be the same without David Gilmour or Nick Mason or Roger Waters. Pink Floyd was a wonderful collection of guys. After the final cut, Roger Waters left the band because, well, as we all know, it was a messy breakup, and Roger tried to turn Pink Floyd into the Roger Waters show and struck out on his own. Following that, we had 2 albums with the 3-man band of Gilmour, Mason, and Wright, Momentary Lapse of Reason, and The Division Bell. These albums saw a shift in style, whereas Roger was really all about the concept album and trying something new and different. David and the rest of the band wanted to focus more on the technical side of things, to create a more immersive listening experience, not focused on trying to deliver a deeper concept, but trying to give music that was powerful and strong and evoked emotions instead of just music to trip out to or to try and bitch about the problems in the world. Music that was profound and could say something. The last we'd heard of Pink Floyd was in 1994 with The Division Bell, featuring prominently Gilmour's soaring and beautiful guitar work. Following that, there was the wonderful tour that we take the Pulse live video from. Pink Floyd never officially broke up at that point, but they were all but done. they'd made their 2 albums that they felt they could, and they felt they'd had their run. Occasional one-off shows here and there, perhaps. Roger Waters continued with The Wall. And the one-off show in particular that was worth mentioning, and probably the only one where all the band finally got together, was for Live 8, when they played a short set that included Comfortably Numb. But Pink Floyd has never put forth a full new effort since The Division Bell in 1994. Well, here we are in 2014, and in late June, early July of this year, Pink Floyd had announced The Endless River to be released, featuring leftover material from The Division Bell, namely Richard Wright's keyboard work, because the rest of the band and remaining did understand just how important Mr. Wright was to the rest of the band. Now, unfortunately, this caused a lot of fans to sort of feel that this album was a cash grab or something worth overlooking, because they felt that hearing that it was leftover recordings from The Division Bell made them feel like it was pieces of crap from the cutting room floor, not worth giving the time to. I read all of these things, and having just listened to this album a few minutes ago, cover to cover, deluxe edition, I can say that they're very and completely, utterly wrong. Listening to this album was difficult, to say the least. Not because it was bad by any means, but because of what it meant. This is the first Pink Floyd album to exist within my lifetime, but I am a huge fan of all of their work. Pink Floyd means a lot to me. And actually hearing something that was produced and created by them here in my lifetime, in my era, is a very interesting experience. Now, this isn't the Pink Floyd that we remember from back in the day. This definitely does sound a lot more like the Division Bell era Floyd. But in this case, they've gone for a more focused effort on the music. In this case, it's all about the interplay between Gilmour's guitar work and the remnants of recordings and beautiful things found from Richard Wright's days. These are things that they've found and discovered that were either meant to be on the Division Bell, were ancient things from the 60s, or were things that they knew Wright would have wanted to play. Either way, all of the keys and synth material on this album comes from somewhere in Richard Wright's abilities. Now, whoever plays it, I'm unsure, but on this album, Richard Wright's beauty and technical excellence is brought to life once again, made to interplay with David's guitar work. There's only a few tracks on this album that have vocals, one featuring an interesting interlude with Stephen Hawking. Louder Than Words is the only track that features a full-on vocal score, but the rest is instrumental. Now, most people would not be used to this something from Floyd. Many people are used to David and Roger's voices, making this album seem a bit of an odd one off for a lot of fans. This album is meant to be, as Gilmour said, listened to as a whole. You gotta sit down, immerse yourself in it, feel it. Now, of course, once you listen to it and you get used to it, I'm sure that you will have your favorite parts that you could skip to. But this is not an album that you could just grab and pick out a track that sounds interesting, because it's told in 4 sections. It's a double album. Each side of each disc contains one long song. Each a suite of creation. So trying to pick out a single song in this entire list that stands out is very difficult, because each song, each track that we'd be typically used to is all part of one bigger song, much like Ariane's Theory of Everything from last year. It's not a concept album, it doesn't try and tell a story, though it has an overarching idea. It's more about the music and the emotion therein. This was a hard album for me to listen to, because I was very emotional with it. Brought me to tears nearly at a few points, because I knew that this would be the last effort I would ever hear from Pink Floyd. I would never be hearing anything new from this band again. They have said that this is it. They're done. No more. This is the end of Pink Floyd. And listening to this, knowing it was their final swan song, their final blaze of glory, It was a very emotional and very powerful experience, to say the least. In this album, it almost felt, as I was listening to it, as if I was strolling through the gallery of Pink Floyd, interacting with the moving pictures therein. For people who are familiar with Pink Floyd's discography, there are some moments on this album that are evocative of moments in other albums. Not that they were completely rehashed or reused, but it's taking another revisited standpoint on some things. In some parts, we revisit the chaos of the final act of The Wall, like Run Like Hell or Waiting for the Worms. There are a few parts of that section where you could definitely feel like you're listening to a different perspective of Run Like Hell, but when I talk about Waiting for the Worms, it sounds nothing like the actual track, but you feel like you are in the environment of that song. Other things revisited include the feel of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and the Cave of Echoes, the windy cave that we hear near the end of the song and feel like we are going through after the alien soundscape. We feel that we several times revisit the cluster from the beginning of The Division Bell, as well as, sorry, it's the end of the day, as well as some moments back from their psychedelic era, here and there. We feel that occasionally we revisit, and when I say revisit, I mean take a whole new look at. We feel that we are within the environment of some of these songs, but from a different perspective, a different sound, a different feel, but yet there's something there that feels like it. We revisit some feelings evocative of Dark Side of the Moon now and again, of Metal, of Adam Hartmother. And as we listen to these tracks, this is for me, I felt as if I was now walking back through Pink Floyd's history, and they were playing me back, because everything inside of this album, though it felt like a tribute to Richard Wright, which they had always said it was, also felt like a tribute to the band itself, to everything that Pink Floyd has ever done. It's as if these men, now older, looked back on their career and played a fitting swan tribute to everything they've done, in a humbling way. They're aware of what they've done, of course, but it's not a big deal, hey, look at what we've done. It's an emotional thing, because they know that they've touched millions of lives, and that millions have touched theirs. I felt that many times I was strolling through these album covers or interacting with them in some way. The textures and emotions and feelings presented on some of these albums were evoked several times throughout the disc. I'm sure that you may feel differently, but I felt in several times as well. I was, again, in the alien world of Echoes, that I was inside of these covers, interacting with these songs, strolling through them. One of the most prominent elements when it came to this revisitation from a different view of these different albums is The Machine. One of my favorite Pink Floyd songs, Welcome to the Machine. The Machine, I feel, is a character presented on this album, especially in the fourth suite, the second side of the second disc. The Machine is characterized by the heavy bassy sounds and the strange warbling synths, the darker sound. Anyone who's heard the song understands. And at several times, usually in the beginning or middle of the other three tracks, we get a very brief glimpse of the Machine, as if we are in the desert, and we see this black hulking mass off in the distance over the sand dunes. We hear it, we feel it, and we anticipate its approach. But it doesn't show itself until the fourth act. And in that part, we see the Machine once more. We come face to face with the beast from the 70s. The Machine that took everything from us in that song. The Machine we were welcomed to, but in the end was a cruel beast. We face it yet again. We don't let it take us this time. We don't get shoved into the Machine and told to have a cigar and get everything completely pulled over our faces and lied to us and end up on the other side of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, burned out. Instead, we fight the Machine. Or rather, the music fights for us. As I was listening to this, the Machine was preparing itself. And the music embodied within myself, within my visual thought representation of the music, fought back against it and defeated it and transitioned louder than words. It's very difficult to describe the music exactly on this disc because it's a very beautiful sound. If you're familiar with the tastes of the Division Bell, then the Endless River won't seem that off to you, except for you need to understand the fact that this isn't something you can just throw on and jam out to. This is a very deep and personal album, something you need to experience alone, in the dark, immersed in feeling. Because there will be emotions inside of this album, especially if you're a big Pink Floyd fan like myself. Because this is two men looking back at the end of their era, looking back at everything they've done and playing a fitting emotional tribute to all of it. The guitar work, of course, is David Gilmour quality. There's nothing more to say. If you know Floyd, you know David Gilmour, you know what to expect from the guitars. The keyboards, which is the main focus of this album, which is why it was created, are beautiful. Richard Wright quality, as it had always been. If you're used to the way they sounded with Floyd in the past, you'll be right at home here. The biggest detractor I feel that many people may feel is the lack of vocals and the fact that this is technically leftover recordings. Don't fear that. You need to listen to this album. This is a fitting end for Pink Floyd. Beautiful and emotional, soaring and heavenly and transcendent. This album will take you places. In the 4 suites that played throughout the over an hour long of this disc, I was completely encapsulated. Time had gone by and I didn't even know where it went. I was completely immersed in the song and feel of the music. It was beautiful. Now where it falls in my opinion in the rest of the Pink Floyd discography has yet to be determined. I've listened to it once and I've listened to the rest countless times. But it is worth saying that this is a fantastic album. The emotions and flavors on this disc, as well as the bonus tracks even. The bonus tracks are also very good. They don't feel like second thoughts. The two that come after Louder Than Words that are just an association of numbers and letters. And then Nirvana, which almost seems like a tribute to Nirvana at the very beginning of it. But at the end, halfway through, takes the Floyd feeling once more. Though those bonus tracks do feel a little bit unnecessary, they're still beautiful and wonderful, especially near the ending part of Nirvana. The reason they feel unnecessary is because they are bonuses. As far as the album core itself goes, beginning to end, no bonuses in there. The pacing is excellent and wonderful. You get your moments of rest. You get your moments where you're allowed to relax within the music. And then you get the high points of the music. The album effectively follows a wonderful curve as you listen. The album will take you through a lot of scenes, from your memories even, evoking things you might not have thought of for a long time, people, places, and experiences. It will also remind you of many places you've gone with Pink Floyd before inside of their albums. You'll revisit those locations with new eyes. You will experience a wonderful album with excellent pacing. And Louder Than Words, the technical final track, discounting the bonus ones, is a perfect end. It's the final look by Pink Floyd, back into everything that they've done and the experiences we've had with them and they've had with us. And David Gilmour ends this career with Floyd with lines that really could not have worked any better than they did. There's a lot of things to say at the end of Pink Floyd. From the 1960s all the way up till now, there's a lot of things that he could have said to make the final Pink Floyd track count. He also could have said a lot of things to make it stupid. But he chose possibly the best things he could. He says, this thing called song, it has a pulse. This thing we do, it's louder than words. Couple simple sentences. Describes music. Describes rock. describes Pink Floyd, describes the things that we listen to, that we attach to, the things that we feel. Music is more than just words. It's alive, and it exists. And Pink Floyd takes you on this beautiful, heavenly, atmospheric journey through emotions and scenes of memories, where you truly understand that music is transcendent. It has a pulse. It's louder than any words that could ever be spoken. It is truly art, and it's truly beautiful. Overall, The Endless River is a fantastic and wonderful album. Pink Floyd have created a fitting tribute to Richard Wright, and a beautiful ending to their career. I could not have asked for more. Well, aside from a reunion of the whole band, but within reality, this is the most we could have asked for. It's beautiful, it's heavenly, it's atmospheric, its pacing is wonderful, and it's an incredible album. Even if it's the end for Pink Floyd, listening to this, you will be reminded of everything that has happened and everything yet to come. It's Pink Floyd's swan song, and it's a very, very beautiful one from beginning to end. It's emotional and it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. Go out and get it. You won't regret it. Even if you're on the fence, get it. I loved it, and I hope you will too. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. My name is Kenshin. Rock on.